My family went bankrupt, and my father forced me into a marriage alliance. They favored my gentle and refined older brother, but I fell for the volatile and unpredictable younger one. Dean Xiao cornered me in the room, gripping my wrist as he coldly demanded, "Nova Jiang, have you lost your mind? The one you're supposed to marry is my brother." I look at the man before me who, in our past life, went nearly mad after my death and risked his life to avenge me. Dean Xiao, you're crazier than I am. I don't like Troy Xiao, I like Dean Xiao. As my words fall, the expressions of everyone at the dining table change in unison. "You silly child." My mother yanked me hard, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about?" My father also frowned deeply, lowering his voice to tell me not to mess around, because in their eyes, Troy Xiao is outstanding and excels in everything. Dean Xiao, on the contrary, was the complete opposite, violent, manic, and utterly unaccomplished. Hearing my words, Dean Xiao across the table seemed stunned, his fork clattering onto the plate. Only Troy Xiao barely maintained his composure, forcing a stiff smile. "That's not bad either. Good news." Beside them, the faces of Xiao Dongliang and his wife turned pale, yet they remained silent. After all, even though my family went bankrupt, my father's position in the political sphere still stands firm. Currently, the Xiao family is stuck at a critical juncture of a major project, so naturally, they can't afford to break ties with us. "Let's eat first. The food is getting cold." Recalling that Dean Xiao seemed to have had stomach problems since childhood, I remarked indifferently. No one at the table spoke, and one by one, they lowered their heads. Dean Xiao was even more sullen, burying his head in his meal as if he had never eaten before. I couldn't help but feel amused, a slight smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "Dean Xiao, long time no see." The meal was predictably unpleasant. In the end, only Dean Xiao and I were still eating, one leisurely, the other wolfing down his food, as if he'd never eaten before. Not daring to look up, I glanced at the bowed head of Dean Xiao, then stood up and excused myself to use the restroom. Then he effortlessly made his way toward the corner. Just as I finished washing my hands and was about to leave, a tall figure swiftly darted in. "What did you mean by what you said earlier?" Dean Xiao frowned deeply, his face dark as he leaned against the wall and questioned me. I watched as he tilted his head slightly and smiled. "Literally, I don't like Troy Xiao, I like you. If marriage is unavoidable, I choose to marry you." Dean Xiao froze, looking at me as if I were an idiot. "You don't like Troy Xiao, you like me, yeah. Are you out of your mind?" I twitched the corner of my mouth, at a loss for words. After all, in Dean Xiao's eyes, wherever his brother was present, he was merely the supporting role. How could anyone possibly choose him over his brother? Before I could respond, Dean Xiao's expression darkened, as if he was certain I was playing him. The next second, he slammed his fist hard against the wall beside me, his gaze fierce. "Nova Jiang, I don't care what your intentions are. Stay away from me, otherwise, I'll make sure you learn the meaning of regret." "Understood." I looked at the man with a gloomy expression before me, and suddenly, the image of Dean Xiao from my past life flashed through my mind. 3 days after my death, my shattered corpse lay unattended in the morgue. It was he who found me, tears falling drop by drop onto my body, before finally embracing me with reddened eyes. He said, "Nova Jiang, don't be afraid, I'll take you home. And I'll never let anyone hurt you again." My vision suddenly blurred, and I couldn't suppress a slight tremble. Seeing this, Dean Xiao panicked in his eyes and instinctively tried to distance himself. "You." The next second, I grabbed his collar and yanked him close, my lips nearly brushing the corner of his mouth. "Dean Xiao, why is it that you can like me, but I can't like you? I insist on liking you." Dean Xiao was completely dumbfounded, his eyes wide open, holding up a surrendering posture, not daring to touch me. When the hell did I say I liked you? Really don't like me?" I stared at him unblinkingly. And after a moment, the corners of my lips slowly curled up. Her fingers trailed down along his collar, gliding over his chest and waist, with a slight downward glance. "Then what are you doing?" With a sudden flush, Dean Xiao turned red from his neck to the tips of his ears. He pushed me away violently. "Are you insane?" His eyes filled with terror as he quickly backed away 1/2 meter from me, as if his hair stood on end, pointing at me. He told me not to come near him. So I stood against the wall right where I was, putting on a defiant look as if I had nothing to lose, and said, "What's the matter? I just like you. Your parents asked me to choose, and I picked you. You're absolutely unreasonable." Dean Xiao was so angry his forehead darkened, and he frowned, asking if I had lost my mind. I laughed even harder and said, "Yeah, I've got a disease where I'll die without you." Dean Xiao turned his head sharply and cursed, "Fuck." The tips of his ears red as blood. "Dean, what's wrong?" Just then, Troy Chiao's voice suddenly came from the living room. Dean Xiao's expression changed slightly, giving me a warning look. "I don't like you. Get out and don't say anything about choosing me again." After saying that, he turned and left. But instead of going to the living room, he quickly went upstairs. I watched his fleeing figure, and an indescribable bitterness spread in my heart. This was the man who, in my past life, died a gruesome death for my sake. The blind date ended on a sour note, and when I got home, my parents couldn't help but give me a lecture, call me a fool blinded by greed. With Troy Chiao's excellent conditions right there, I somehow set my sights on Dean Xiao instead. "You just don't know what's good for you." My father roared in fury. My mother tried to mediate, suggesting I arrange a private meeting with Troy Chiao another day to apologize and try to rebuild our connection. I look at the blood relatives before me, and my heart aches a little. "Dad, Mom, what if I told you that Troy Chiao is nothing but a hypocritical scoundrel? Would you still insist on me marrying him?" My mother is stunned for a moment, then frowns and says, "How could that be? The eldest son of the Chiao family has been famously outstanding since childhood. How could he be hypocritical?" Then she started persuading me again, saying everyone has flaws and that I should just endure it. "Listen. That Dean Xiao has a terrible temper and no real ability. He might even be an illegitimate child of the Chiao family. What future could you possibly have by following him? Follow Troy, and all the Chiao family's wealth will be yours in the future." Watching my mother's earnest attempts to dissuade me, I suddenly had a dazed recollection. In my previous life, when I was beaten half to death by domestic violence from Troy Chiao, they also persuaded me to endure it like this. But they had no idea of the torment I endured. Troy Chiao appears gentle and outstanding on the surface, but behind the scenes, he is a violent paranoid. He grew up under the oppressive control of his parents, desperately pushing himself to excel. All the accumulated resentment and pain eventually transformed into violence behind closed doors. Every time he came home drunk, he would vent everything through beatings, unleashing his fury on me. The Chiao parents were also beasts wearing human masks. Not only did they indulge him, but they also helped him threaten me. I once tried to seek help from my own parents, only to be met with their cold indifference and discouragement. In the end, Troy Chiao escalated his cruelty. After growing tired of me, he began dragging me into business circles for social engagements. I wished for death rather than life. On the verge of collapse, I lost my sanity. He orchestrated an accident to take my life, securing a substantial insurance payout. He even hypocritically gained the reputation of a devoted and loving husband. After my death, my parents didn't even consider investigating the truth. Only Dean Xiao, after my death, he went mad with rage, step by step, pushing those who harmed me to the brink of despair. In the end, he held my ashes and leaped into the sea. Closing my eyes, my heart grew colder inch by inch. In this life, I want only Dean Xiao. I kept pestering Dean Xiao, always using the excuse of looking for Troy Chiao to go see him. He was utterly annoyed and repeatedly chased me away with a dark expression. In the end, he simply started avoiding me. But having lived a second life, I knew him quite well. It was easy to find him at the racing club. Dressed in a black racing suit, his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and long legs were accentuated, showcasing his impressive physique to the fullest. This was far more outrageous than wearing grey sweatpants. I narrowed my eyes, gritted my teeth, and muttered a curse about his indecency. I walked over and saw a few men and women also gathering around. One of the girls was about to reach out and hug him. I strode forward and hooked my arm around Dean Xiao's neck. "Sorry, but my fiancé doesn't like other women touching him." In a word, the expressions of everyone present changed instantly. Dean Xiao's face flushed red in an instant, pushing me away as he said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" Then, stammering, he introduced me to the others, saying I was just a friend, not his fiancé. The people nearby exchanged subtle glances and, with laughter, quickly changed the subject without pressing further. The girl who was about to approach Dean Xiao earlier came up again, asking him to take her for a ride. Dean Xiao hesitated and glanced at me. I smiled and said, "Sure." Then I raised my hand and rested it on the shoulder of a guy standing nearby. "Little brother, can you take me for a spin? I've never tried this before. It looks pretty thrilling." The boy's eyes lit up, his grin stretching from ear to ear as he eagerly agreed. I turned around, ready to follow him, but the next second, my arm was yanked back with a forceful tug. Dean Xiao pulled me to his side with a dark expression. "I'll take her." I curled my lips and smiled. In the following days, no matter where Dean Xiao went, I could always find him immediately. He's sleeping at home, so I just go upstairs and pull off his blanket. When he goes out to have fun, I follow him closely without leaving a step. I just love seeing him so angry, yet unable to bring himself to scold me. After a few days of this, the way he looks at me has completely changed. He finally warned me fiercely that if I kept following him, he wouldn't be polite anymore. I was curious about how he planned to deal with me, so that night I went to the bar he frequented again. He didn't seem surprised at all, nor did he immediately try to drive me away. Instead, he let me sit down and join them in drinking and playing games. The alcohol was undoubtedly strong, and the game was the cliché truth or dare. What I didn't expect was the girl who dared to sit next to him. It was obvious at a glance that she had been eyeing him for a long time, with half her body practically pressed against him. After losing a round of the game, someone egged her on to give Dean Xiao a kiss. The girl's face turned red instantly, and she glanced at Dean Xiao, saying it might not be appropriate. Dean Xiao's expression was inscrutable, yet he didn't refute immediately. Thus, the teasing grew even more fervent. As the girl turned to look at Dean Xiao again, I suddenly understood his intention. He's trying to use this girl to force me out. Taking a slight breath, I'm starting to get angry. I know Dean Xiao keeps pushing me away repeatedly because he feels he can't control his mania, worried he might hurt me, and even more worried that I might regret it. After all, in his eyes, he's just a worthless failure, although he doesn't like Troy Xiao either. At least Troy Xiao is outstanding and can give me the happiness that others envy. But what about himself? Doesn't it hurt him to see me with Troy Xiao? I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I abruptly stood up. The next second, in full view of everyone, I swung my leg over and straddled Dean Xiao. Glancing sideways at the person beside me, I said, "Sorry, little sister, but he's mine." Suddenly, the surroundings fell into complete silence. Dean Xiao's face turned pale. Staring at me speechlessly, I slowly lowered my head and saw his Adam's apple bob violently. What are you doing? You." As the words left my mouth, I bit down on his lips. For a fleeting moment, I thought the person beneath me had stopped breathing, but his scorching chest reminded me, this man was alive. Until I stepped back, Dean Xiao remained wide-eyed, as if the sky had fallen. I found it both amusing and puzzling, but then suddenly felt a pang of sorrow. Dean Xiao had kissed me. In my past life, after I died, after he had suppressed it for so long, it's just a pity that by then I had already lost all warmth and couldn't feel his burning heat. Coming back to my senses, Dean Xiao's entire face had turned from red to pale, and he angrily told me to get down. Then, in a flash, he jumped up and rushed out. "Where are you going?" "To the bathroom." Dean Xiao slammed the door hard, and before leaving, he didn't forget to shoot me a threatening glance. Don't you dare follow me." I let out an "oh" and leaned back on the sofa, unable to suppress the smile on my lips. How can he be so adorable? Why didn't I notice it earlier? After Dean Xiao left, the others couldn't help but gossip about me. I remained as steady as a mountain. The girl from earlier seemed unwilling to let it go, biting her lip as she asked me what my relationship with Dean Xiao was. I glanced at her and said she had just seen it for herself. "But Dean Xiao has never mentioned you before. So what?" I looked at the girl and said, "So you think he likes you? Little sister, don't deceive yourself when it comes to matters of the heart." With that, I got up and walked over to the other sofa. Out of sight, out of mind. However, what I didn't expect was that someone actually had the nerve to hit on me. The man leered at me with a sleazy look in his eyes, saying he wanted to buy me a drink. Then he casually draped his arm over my shoulder. I had just frowned when I heard a sharp whoosh of wind behind me. Before I could turn around, the man beside me was knocked to the ground by a punch. Dean Xiao grabbed him by the collar and growled, "Are you fucking crazy?" The man was nearly knocked senseless, but as soon as he regained his senses, he started struggling violently. "What the hell is wrong with you? I was just buying her a drink. What's it to you? Let go of me, you bastard." Dean Xiao's face turned cold, and without hesitation, he delivered another punch. "Say that again if you dare." seeing the unusual expression on Dean Xiao's face, my heart sank as I stood up. The man who didn't want to be beaten was incredibly stubborn, recklessly provoking Dean Xiao without a care, shouting and cursing him as crazy. The next moment, Dean Xiao's expression completely changed. He grabbed a nearby bottle and smashed it hard on the man's head, then he began punching the man's head repeatedly, amidst the splattering blood. Screams erupted all around, quickly descending into chaos. Seeing the person on the ground being beaten to the point of near suffocation, I gritted my teeth and lunged forward to grab Dean Xiao. Enough, stop hitting him. Dean Xiao turned a deaf ear, his swinging elbow grazing my cheek with brutal force. I endured the pain and kept calling him, mustering all my strength to turn his head as if my life depended on it. Look at me, Dean. Dean Xiao's fist froze mid-air, his dark, hollow pupils rapidly contracting. A few seconds later, his breathing gradually steadied. I let out a sigh of relief and pulled him tightly against my chest. It's okay now, everything's okay. Under my continuous soothing, Dean Xiao finally calmed down, yet his entire demeanor became eerily composed. Soon the police arrived, and I followed him to give a statement. He remained very quiet throughout, said everything he needed to say, and finally paid the fine. Until we stepped out of the police station, suddenly, he tilted his head and asked me, "Aren't you afraid of me?" I shook my head. I wanted to speak again, but he abruptly interrupted. "Nova Jiang, there's something wrong here. Do you understand?" He tapped his temple, his dark eyes fixed on me, and said word by word, "I can't control my violence. You chose me. Aren't you afraid I might kill you one day?" I opened my mouth and said, "You wouldn't," but he asked me why I thought he wouldn't. "Without you, I can continue to live freely and without restraint, but with you, I have to constantly watch myself and control myself. You're just a burden, understand?" My heart skipped a beat as I looked at the person before me and asked, "Do you really think that way? What if I said your brother is a sanctimonious beast?" Darkness surged wildly in his eyes, his brows gradually furrowing, yet he remained silent for a long while, as if pondering what I meant by those words. I looked at the person before me and nodded after a long pause. "Fine, you prefer me choosing your brother, is that it? As you wish." On the third day of my falling out with Dean Xiao, the Xiao family held an early birthday celebration for Troy Xiao. Many upper-class individuals attended the banquet, and naturally, my parents brought me along. However, what I never expected was that they had actually conspired with the Xiao Dongliang couple to set a trap for me, just when I was completely off guard. Troy Xiao stood on stage and announced he had good news to share, then he smiled gently and looked at me. "Nova, come up here." I stood frozen with the wine glass in my hand, my brows gradually furrowing. Before I could even react, my parents pushed me onto the stage. A wave of enthusiastic applause erupted from below, followed by murmurs of discussion. "Nova Jiang from the Jiang family. Does this mean a marriage alliance is in the works?" Honestly, these two make a perfect match. Both talented and attractive, but didn't we hear the Jiang family had some trouble recently? Wouldn't this be considered the Jiangs reaching above their station? Amidst the clamor, it felt as if I had suddenly returned to my past life, to my wedding with Troy Xiao. The night before the wedding, I discovered Troy Xiao fooling around with someone else. Furious, I insisted on calling off the engagement, but was slapped hard by him in the dressing room. That was when he revealed his true nature. But it was also at that moment I had no way out. The moment I stepped onto the red carpet, I desperately held back my tears. I desperately wished someone would come to save me. But there isn't anyone. Dean Xiao had already left in disappointment before that. And I didn't even notice him. Standing on this stage again today, I feel almost suffocated. Troy Xiao dared to push me to this point because he was certain I had no way out. If I mess up today, not only will the Jiang family and I become a laughingstock, my parents will also be ruined and have stones thrown at them when they're down. "Nova, what are you staring at? Come tell everyone our engagement date." Troy Xiao smiled and shoved the microphone into my hand. Looking at the hypocritical mask on his face, I felt nauseous. Ignoring him, I turned and stared straight at the banquet hall entrance. "Dean Xiao, I'm only giving you 3 seconds. If you don't show up in 3 seconds, I'll teach you how to write the word regret." 3, 2, 1, bang. A loud noise came from the entrance. I looked up in shock. Amid the roar of a massive engine, a black supercar slammed to a stop against the wall. Who is that? Are you insane? Security? Where's security?" someone's broken in an instant. The entire banquet hall erupted into screams and chaos. I stared at the somewhat familiar sports car not far away, my eye twitching violently. I told you to come over. Not to fly over. The next second, the car door opened. A long leg clad in black racing gear with red patterns stepped out. Then, moving upward, it revealed a lean waist and well-defined pectoral muscles. Dean Xiao had a black coat draped over his shoulders as he reached up to remove the helmet from his head. The slightly damp ends of his hair swayed lightly, and his sharp, piercing black eyes looked straight in my direction. The moment our eyes met, I gasped, "Damn, how can my man be so handsome?" Xiao, the second young master of the Xiao family, he's insane, actually driving in like this. Where are his manners? Manners, haven't you heard? The second son of the Xiao family is a violent lunatic with mental issues. Heavens. In that case, calling him a violent maniac would be an understatement. The surroundings buzzed with discussions, and Troy Xiao beside me also tightly furrowed his brows. "Dean, you, bro," Dean Xiao interrupted, looking at Troy Xiao and enunciating each word clearly, "taking my person while I'm away. Isn't that a bit inappropriate?" With that one sentence, the room below instantly fell into dead silence. My parents and the Xiao couple were utterly shocked, while the other guests remained clueless about what was happening. If I recall correctly, wasn't I the one Nova Jiang chose for the marriage alliance? Dean Xiao looked at me again, his dark pupils radiating an extremely gentle yet sharp, piercing light, under the watchful eyes of everyone. He walked toward me step by step. "What do you say, Miss Jiang?" As the words fell, Dean Xiao stopped in front of me, slightly bowing and making an inviting gesture toward me, looking at his outstretched hand. My heart pounded wildly, my eyes suddenly stung. It was as if, in this moment, I had crossed the torrent of time and once again stood on the stage of my wedding from my past life. But this time, someone came to save me. Yes, the moment I placed my hand in Dean Xiao's, he immediately grasped it tightly. The warmth from his palm spread all the way to mine, and in that moment, I truly felt my rebirth. The nightmares of my past life are slowly fading away. In the future, it's the hands of me and Dean Xiao tightly clasped together. Nova Jiang, seeing that Dean Xiao and I were getting along well, Troy Xiao couldn't help but darken his expression beside us. Before he could say another word, Dean Xiao snorted coldly and pulled me away, without even acknowledging the others. He led me straight out of the banquet hall. I had originally thought about staying a few more minutes to tidy things up, but looking at Dean Xiao's resolute profile, suddenly, I felt like giving up. Is there anything more important than him right now? Following Dean Xiao outside, I saw another new sports car parked nearby. Inside sat a man also wearing a racing suit, who was stunned when he saw Dean Xiao bringing me out. "Holy shit, you're serious? Dean, wait, you just snatched your wife back like that. Enough talk, move." Impatient, Dean Xiao frowned, yanked the car keys from his hand, and shoved him out. "The car's inside, go drive it yourself, I'm leaving first." As the words fell, he had already pushed me into the passenger seat. I was completely bewildered and didn't even think to fasten my seatbelt in that moment. TCH, Dean Xiao immediately grew even more impatient, his face darkening as he leaned over to help me fasten it. Unexpectedly, after several tugs, the seatbelt happened to get stuck. He froze halfway in front of me, unable to move forward or back, his ears turning bright red in an instant. "Damn it, what the hell is this?" I burst out laughing, accidentally brushing my chest against his arm. Almost instantly, Dean Xiao recoiled as if he'd seen a ghost. "You, do it yourself." He looked like he was about to combust, his face dark with a flush of red. The man outside the car was left dumbfounded. I cleared my throat lightly, suppressing a smile as I fastened my seatbelt. The next second, the car zoomed off with a hum, as if someone had lit a fire under it. I tilted my head slightly, unable to hold back a chuckle at Dean Xiao's flushed profile. After a long while, the redness on his neck finally faded, yet his expression darkened slightly. "That day you said Troy Xiao was a beast. What did you mean? What did he do to you?" The corner of my mouth drooped slightly, but I still didn't look away from Dean Xiao. "Isn't it a bit late to ask me now?" I said unhurriedly, since he had already ruined Troy Xiao's birthday party, which meant he was tied to me now. However, Dean Xiao frowned and said he hadn't intended to make such a big scene. If it weren't for that idiot Laro-san insisting on betting cars with me, I wouldn't have been late. I glanced at the car emblem ahead and slightly raised my brow, so it seems this car was what he won in the bet. Suddenly, I remembered that in my previous life, on the day I married Troy Chow, he seemed to have been in a car accident. After that, he never touched racing again. I frowned, about to speak when he interrupted me again. And don't think this means I'm whatever you think about you. I'm just helping you, and I want to figure out exactly what you know. Dean Chow kept a straight face without looking sideways and said, as for helping the Jiang family, although he didn't have as much wealth and influence as the Chow family, he would still do his best. I narrowed my eyes at him and remained silent. Seeing that I didn't respond, he frowned, hesitated for a while, and then said, if you don't want to marry into the family, that's fine too. I'll help you think of other ways. Dean Chow, say one more word and I'll have you right here. I stared coldly at Dean Chow and said, for a full 3 seconds, the car was dead silent. Dean Chow mechanically turned his head, his widened eyes carrying a trace of bewilderment. The rest was pure terror. At this point, saying such things, you're just being heartless after getting what you wanted, shameless and irresponsible. No, that's not what I meant. What do you mean by not that meaning? Am I holding you back, troubling you, or forcing you? I narrowed my eyes at Dean Chow, slightly leaning in. If you don't want an arranged marriage, why crash the banquet? You're so aggrieved, you might as well send me back to Troy Chow. At worst, it's just a death sentence. Better than being despised here. Dean Chow was utterly stunned, not even looking ahead as he urgently spoke to me. What nonsense are you talking about? What death sentence? I told you that's not what I meant. He flusteredly tried to explain to me, nearly biting his tongue in the process. Looking at the face before me, I suddenly felt a bit reluctant to tease him further, but if he hadn't said such infuriating things, I wouldn't have deliberately provoked him like this. Thinking of the crazy things he did for me in my past life, I closed my eyes and said, enough. Dean Chow froze. The next second, I leaned over and kissed him hard on the lips. With a screech, the tires skidded violently. Dean Chow made a sharp turn and pulled the car over to the side of the road. Nova Jiang, he shouted at me angrily, glaring but unable to find the words. Finally, his face flushed red as he blurted out, do you know how dangerous that was just now? I raised an eyebrow and said, of course I knew, but rather than letting you send me back, I'd rather die with you. With a click, the seatbelt came undone. Before Dean Chow could recover from his shock, I turned and pinned him against the seat. Glancing at him, I slowly leaned in, my lips brushing past his mouth, nose, and eyes, finally biting down on his ear, speaking in a hoarse voice, better to be a dashing ghost than a resentful, malevolent one. The moment the words fell, I sensed the change in Dean Chow. His body grew tense, rigid. With a smirk, I pressed against his wildly pounding heart and softly called his name. Dean. The driver's seat was cramped, and the temperature suddenly became scorching hot. Dean Chow's hand around my waist tightened bit by bit, radiating a burning heat. Watching his Adam's apple bob frantically from nervousness, I chuckled softly and kissed it. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, you can't park here. Didn't you see the sign over there? Before the words could even finish, the traffic cop outside the car window froze in place. 6 eyes met in utter silence. I slowly raised an eyebrow, thinking to myself, Uncle, you're not exactly young anymore. How can you still be so clueless, beneath me? Dean Chow snapped back to reality and completely lost it. He fumbled around, trying to restore the situation to normal, but the more he panicked, the more his hands ended up in places they shouldn't be. In the end, he was practically losing his mind. The traffic cop outside couldn't bear to watch and silently turned his head away. Anyway, just drive away as soon as possible, and remember to pay the fine later. With that, he left grumbling, his face flushed bright red. Inside the car, I sat back in the passenger seat with some regret. Are you still going to take me back, Dean Chow? No, I'm not. Oh, then do I need to remind you again that I want to be with you? No, you don't. All right. Can we go home now? I'm tired. Dean Chow said nothing and quickly started the car. I grinned at the car window. Little brat, thought you could outsmart me. After I left with Dean Chow, Troy Chow cleaned up the mess. To maintain his image as a modest gentleman, he publicly claimed that I had chosen his brother. Since his brother didn't come, he had to take care of me on his behalf. But in reality, the announcement was about the good news between Dean Chow and me. In the end, He tactfully mentioned that Dean Xiao also had his own merits and hoped that Dean Xiao and I would receive everyone's blessings. As soon as these high-sounding words were spoken, Dean Xiao and I instantly became the targets of public criticism. Some were cursing me, saying that as a young lady of the Jiang family, I had such an outstanding brother yet chose to favor a good-for-nothing instead. Others were berating Dean Xiao, listing all the outrageous things he had done over the years. Mocking him for being worlds apart from Troy Qiao. It's no surprise he'd do something so disgusting. What a shame for young Master Qiao, a rare talent among hundreds, to be insulted like this by them. Exactly, but I don't think that Qiao II and the Jiang family's young lady will last long together. One's a clueless brat, the other's a violent lunatic with a screw loose. TSK, amidst all the sighs and lamentations, I just lay at home plotting my own course. Having experienced what I did in my past life, this level of trouble is nothing. Right now, my top priority is to persuade Dean Xiao to return to the Qiao family business. If we don't reclaim what rightfully belongs to him, we'll undoubtedly face immense difficulties later on. At this thought, I sprang up from my seat, humming a tune as I applied my makeup with care. It's been 2 days since I last saw Dean Xiao, and my heart is itching with anticipation. I want to see him blush. Just as I finished getting ready and opened my bedroom door, I saw my parents sitting in the living room with worried expressions. Seeing me come out, their faces immediately grew even longer, asking where I was going. To the Qiao family, I replied and was about to leave, but my mother stood up and came over. Judging by her expression, I knew without her saying a word that she was about to scold me again for choosing Dean Xiao. I raised my hand to stop her. Mom, don't worry about the family issues. The Qiao family wouldn't dare not help solve them. As for the rest, I looked at my mother and said word by word, you never cared about me before, and from now on, you don't need to either. I'll provide you with a life free from want, but beyond that, there's nothing more. With that, I strode away without looking back. In my past life, after I died, my soul somehow never dispersed. That's why I could see all the things Dean Xiao did for me. I also saw my parents. I saw them grieve for me for a while. Then they went abroad at the Qiao family's suggestion. Later, they even adopted a godson overseas. It didn't take long to emerge from the shadow of my death. I really should have guessed. Although the Jiang family had only me as their daughter, they didn't love me. In the face of money and power, I was far too insignificant. Moreover, they didn't like having a daughter either, thinking she would just marry off anyway. If it weren't for my father's health condition preventing them from having more, they wouldn't have stopped at just one child. Me. So after my death, I didn't expect them to grieve much, but truly witnessing their indifference still made my heart ache with pain. At that time, I felt that even if I were to live again, it wouldn't be meaningful. Until later, when I saw Dean Xiao, I watched as he held my lifeless body and wept, as he completely severed ties with the Qiao family. I watched as he stood alone to avenge me. To deal with the Qiao family, he was willing to kneel on the ground and beg for help. Beaten half to death, his already injured leg was completely crippled. At that moment, my soul was violently shaken. I swore I would never let him suffer again if given another chance. Arriving at the Qiao residence, the sound of shattering glass greeted me as soon as I stepped inside. This was immediately followed by the furious scolding of Mr. Qiao. If you don't want to stay in this family, then get out. Do you think you're something special? If it weren't for the Qiao family, would you have anything you have now? This was immediately followed by the hypocritical attempts of Mrs. Qiao and Troy Qiao to mediate. I pursed my lips slightly, already guessing who they were berating. But given Dean Xiao's temperament, would he really just let himself be scolded like that? My brow furrowed as I stepped inside. The large fish tank in the living room was shattered, its fish scattered on the floor, none of them moving. They appeared to have been dead for some time. Besides that, a blood-stained ashtray lay discarded on the floor. Dean Xiao stood on the ground covered in water stains and shattered glass, blood seeping from a wound on his forehead. In an instant, my chest felt like it was about to explode. Lay a hand on Dean Xiao. Have they lost their minds? Striding forward, I walked straight up to Dean Xiao and asked him what had happened. He didn't expect me to appear suddenly. His darkened face froze as he asked why I had come. I'm asking you what happened. Who hit you? Perhaps because my expression was too grim, Dean Xiao opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Opposite us, Father Qiao's face turned livid as he said in a deep voice, I hit him. What about it? Seeing the situation turning sour, Troy Chow quickly stepped in to diffuse the tension. While calming his father down, he turned to explain to me. He said Dean, whether due to a bad mood or something else, had accidentally poisoned his father's favorite fish. Someone has already confirmed that the powder was a medication Dean Chow took to suppress his emotions. Dad couldn't hold back his anger and scolded him a few words. Before he could finish speaking, fragments of memories from my past life suddenly flashed through my mind. In that instant, I stared at Troy Chow with such intensity that I wished I could go over and kill him right then and there. Taking a deep breath, I remained rooted to the spot without moving, just turned his head to look at Dean Chow. Did you drug it? Dean Chow was stunned and said of course not, but then he lowered his head, his face turning cold as he said, forget it, fine, whatever. I said of course it matters. Why should you take the blame for something you didn't do? After speaking, I looked at the Chow family members, my gaze settling on Troy Chow's face. If I recall correctly, he's also taking that type of medication. How could uncle and aunt not suspect him? Upon hearing this, Mrs. Chow was stunned and quickly looked at her son. But it wasn't about whether her son was a suspect, it was about why her son would take medicine. Troy Chow's face froze for a moment before he immediately denied the possibility. I don't know where Nova heard it from, but I'm in good health and never take medicine. Bullshit, I calmly interrupted him, saying he told me this himself. Troy Chow's face darkened, and just as he was about to speak, I cut him off again. If you don't believe me, just have someone check his room and you'll see, Mr. Chow's face was already grim, but upon hearing my relentless questioning and unrestrained profanity, his fury escalated uncontrollably. Miss Jiang, are you implying that I've wronged Dean Chow? Someone, go investigate. I want to see who's really wronging whom. As soon as the words fell, the two subordinates immediately turned and went upstairs. Troy Chow's expression completely changed. He wanted to stop them, but it was already too late, and he could only watch helplessly as the two subordinates quickly came back downstairs. There was an extra bottle of medicine in hand. Mr. Chow, this medicine was indeed found in the eldest young Master Chow's room. With that one sentence, the expressions of everyone present changed, but immediately after, Troy Chow stepped forward to explain. He said he had been under a lot of stress lately, so the doctor prescribed him some medication. Upon hearing this, Chow's mother quickly stepped forward to show concern. Chow's father, however, seemed to have noticed something, his face turning a mix of green and red. All right, there's no need to investigate further. Troy Chow glanced at Dean Chow and said, just consider it as if I was the one who drugged you. Dad, your health isn't good. Don't get angry anymore, and don't let others laugh at us. Looking at Troy Chow's smug face, I almost laughed. Tell him straight up that this won't do. It's better to get to the truth. Troy Chow's eyes gleamed as he gave me a helpless glance. He asked me what I wanted to do, as if he were truly the one who had been wronged. I remained unmoved and pushed Dean Chow, who was beside me, forward. If the young master insists on admitting it was his doing, then he should apologize to Dean Chow. Upon hearing this, Father Chow glared but was stopped by Troy Chow. He smiled faintly, his gaze steady on me before turning to Dean Chow and offering an apology. I shouldn't have wronged you so carelessly, little brother. Yet the words little brother carried a hint of gritted teeth. As the words fell, silence settled around us. Then Dean Chow lowered his head and silently pulled me away without a word. Only after we got into the car did he suddenly turn to stare at me. I thought he should be moved to tears, questioning me about why I unconditionally believed in him and defended him so fiercely. Then, unable to control himself, he would hug me tightly. Finally, unable to control your emotions, kiss me fiercely Tilda. Result, why do you know Troy Chow is also taking that kind of medicine? Have you been in his room? What exactly is your relationship? I took a sharp breath, speechless as I stared at the man before me, with the jealousy in the car threatening to suffocate everyone. I leaned forward and decisively wrapped my arms around Dean Chow's neck. The distance suddenly closed, and his gaze instantly became flustered. He leaned back, telling me not to pull this trick. Explain yourself clearly. Just what? I pressed forward and kissed him hard, unlike the usual light kisses. This time he became even more presumptuous. His entire body suddenly burned with heat. When he pushed me away after a few seconds, he had already turned as red as a boiled shrimp. His eyes were glistening with moisture, as if he had been wronged. I quickly turned my head and sat back in the passenger seat, Amitabha Buddha. If this continues, I really won't be able to hold back. Waving my hand, I signaled him to start driving first and then listen to my explanation. Dean Xiao responded groggily and obediently turned to focus on driving. My heart melted into a puddle. It's not that I didn't want to tell Dean Xiao about my past life, it's just that, first, it was too unbelievable. And I was afraid he wouldn't believe me. Second, that past life was too painful. I hurt, and so does he. I don't want him to recall those things. So after some thought, I still made up an excuse. I said Troy Chiao was my senior at school, but even back then I'd unintentionally discovered he wasn't as he appeared. So this arranged marriage involved investigating him in advance. The explanation was full of holes, but Dean Xiao didn't press further. Instead, he abruptly mentioned that he also attended the same school as me, and asked why I hadn't investigated him. Who said I didn't investigate? How else would I know someone's had a crush on me since freshman year? Dean Xiao's expression changed. When did I say I had a crush on you? I tilted my head to look at him and smiled. Dean Xiao belatedly realized what was happening and abruptly turned his head back, no matter how much I coaxed him afterward. He remained silent with a handsome face flushed red. Sigh, what else could I do? Just indulge him, I suppose. I told Dean Xiao that Troy Chiao and his people wouldn't just let us be. If we don't reclaim the rights that belong to him in the company, we'll end up ruined and left with nothing. Only by gaining capital first can we stand against them. Dean Xiao frowned but said nothing. I know he has shares in Xiao's, but he's never managed them. Because they're part of the inheritance left by his biological mother, the more he engages with them, the more he'll miss her. But in the previous life, it was precisely because these shares were taken from him that his later circumstances became so dire. I won't let him, won't let us, repeat that mistake. I gently touched Dean Xiao's face and looked at him seriously, saying, I know you don't like these things, I promise. Once we get past this hurdle, you can do whatever you want. In the future, I'll take care of you. I'll always be by your side. Dean Xiao froze, his pupils trembling violently. The next second, he pulled me tightly into his embrace. I blinked, somewhat confused, but he quickly released me and muttered awkwardly, Who needs you to support me? I've got plenty of skills of my own. I wasn't unwilling to fight before. I was just worried that if anything went wrong, it would implicate the Jiang family. Your parents must be very worried right now, aren't they? After a pause, he said in a low voice, If something really goes wrong, run as far as you can, you hear me? It dawned on me belatedly why he had endured the verbal abuse from Qiao's father at the Qiao family. A pang in my heart, I decisively lifted my head and pecked the man's lips again. I'm already yours. Where else could I possibly run to? Where you are is my home. Dean Xiao turned his face slightly, his eyes dark and unreadable, but after a few seconds, he took my hand. His grip was so tight it nearly crushed me. I won't let you lose, Nova Jiang. Early the next morning, my plan with Dean Xiao officially began. In my past life, Troy Chiao handed me over to his business partners to be toyed with, using me like a prostitute to gain benefits for himself. He even sent me to the beds of some old shareholders to stabilize the company's foundation. Precisely because of this, I was able to carve each of those people into my heart, one by one. I know all too clearly how much filth lies within the Chiao family. I know exactly who is dirty and who is clean. I know who is truly resourceful and who is merely strong in appearance but weak at heart. At my reminder, Dean Xiao quickly got a handle on several of those bugs. Later, at the shareholders' meeting, he suddenly appeared, catching everyone off guard. As a junior assistant by his side, I watched Troy Chiao and some shareholders turn pale, feeling indescribably pleased. Some argued that Dean Xiao had been away from company management for too long and thus no longer deserved to act as a shareholder. Dean Xiao let out a cold snort and roughly pulled out a chair to sit down. I may not have managed a company before, but my shares are still generating profits for it, unlike you, who appears diligent on the surface but is secretly pulling tricks behind the scenes. It's a miracle the company has survived this long under your management. Considering how much money has been siphoned off, the old shareholders' faces turned green with anger. They retorted that Dean Xiao was making unfounded accusations. They said that in their 8 years at Xiao Corporation, the chairman had never spoken to them like that. Upon hearing this, the other shareholders joined in criticizing Dean Xiao, mocking him for being ignorant and daring to embarrass himself here. Troy, why haven't you had him thrown out yet? Having someone like him in the Chow family is truly disheartening, the old shareholder shouted. Everyone then turned their gaze toward Troy Chow in unison. Troy Chow pinched the bridge of his nose in frustration. Dean, you see it yourself, it's not that I don't want you to stay, sigh, go back for now. I'll talk to Mom and Dad tonight and see if we can arrange something else for you. As for the company matters, you don't need to worry about them anymore. What do you mean I don't need to worry? Has the Chow family become your personal empire now? Dean Chow interrupted him in a calm voice. He said the shares were clearly there, and no one had the right to take away his authority. Mr. C.I., do you think I've wronged you? He narrowed his eyes and glanced at the old shareholder, his unfathomable dark eyes glinting with cold light. Then take a look at what these things are. As he spoke, he tilted his chin toward me. Go on, throw it in his face. I nodded in agreement and walked over with a thick folder in hand. A folder was slammed right into the old shareholder's face. A loud thud echoed. The old shareholder, along with his chair, was sent tumbling to the ground by my swing. The entire office fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. I brushed off the non-existent dust from my hands and strutted back to Dean Chow with my head held high. Dean Chow gave me a pitiful glance. His face practically spelling out the number 6 in bold. The others exploded a few seconds later. Mr. CAI's face was a picture of mixed emotions. After struggling to his feet, he began cursing at me and Dean Chow. Just then, the documents I had thrown in his face were picked up by someone nearby. That person happened to be the first ally we had won over, me and Dean Chow. With a look of horror on his face, he read out the contents of the document, recounting how the person surnamed CAI had embezzled funds over the years by abusing his official position. One after another, all the incidents were laid bare on the table. The man surnamed CAI was utterly shocked. But by the time he reacted and tried to snatch the document, it was already too late. The farce finally came to an end with him being taken away by the police. But Dean Chow's first battle in this company officially began. Before leaving, I glanced at Troy Chow's extremely gloomy expression and slowly curled the corner of my lips. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. In the following days, Dean Chow and I began to wreak havoc in the company. Everyone knows Dean Chow is violent and unpredictable, with rumors even suggesting he has mental illness. He doesn't even bother to discipline people behind their backs. He'll hit you right to your face, and you'll just have to swallow your pride if you disagree. As a result, many people have become apprehensive, avoiding Dean Chow whenever they walk by. Those with issues are scheming to get him out, a planning proposal full of loopholes, a trap already set, time-wasting projects that are impossible to complete, all handed to Dean Chow. They are convinced Dean Chow is a good-for-nothing who will surely mess everything up. However, the flawed proposal was quickly approved after being revised by Dean Chow, and the practical results were outstanding. He deftly avoided the preset traps while kicking out a few slackers, further strengthening the department's cohesion, and that project they just couldn't crack was because the Chow family's rivals were pulling the strings behind the scenes. And this person, I've been wanting to meet them ever since my rebirth. He Yiming, CEO of Xinyu Group, was someone Troy Chow had always wanted to collaborate with in my past life. It's a pity he didn't take a liking to the Chow family and never relented. Troy Chow even tried to push me onto him. But unfortunately, he was a devoted husband who didn't lay a finger on me. But in this life, after a series of maneuvers between me and Dean Chow, his position in the company skyrocketed. The news frequently reports that the judgment of the second young master of the Chow family has shifted from being mentally unstable to being a hidden talent. Many industry insiders have started to view him in a new light, even proposing private meetings. Because the Chow family has been managed so tightly over the years, many people want a share of the pie but can't find an opportunity. Dean Chow is seen as a rising star in their eyes, but also an easy target to manipulate. He is simply the perfect candidate for collaboration. In no time, Dean Chow went from being universally despised to a highly sought-after partner. Meanwhile, Troy Chow, who was once the center of attention, has now become utterly neglected. After all, at the previous birthday banquet, I publicly left him to choose his younger brother in front of everyone. No matter how much he maintains his image, some will still question his ability because of this. Chow Dongliang was said to be furious but could do nothing about it. As for Troy Chow, upon receiving the call and learning that he Yiming agreed to meet, Dean Xiao and I immediately prepared to go over. Unexpectedly, as we reached the ground floor, we happened to run into Troy Xiao. His eyes were filled with gloom, and his face showed clear signs of exhaustion, so much so that when he first saw Dean Xiao and me, he almost failed to conceal the hostility in his expression, but he quickly regained his composure and greeted me and Dean Xiao with a smile. "Dean, you've been doing well lately. It seems Nova really is your lucky star." Dean Xiao remained expressionless, slightly raising his eyelids. "Something up?" Troy Xiao's smile faded slightly as he said it was nothing. "By the way, I heard you're also planning to approach Hizong from Xinyu. To be honest, securing cooperation with him is tough, and He Yiming is no pushover either. What leverage do you plan to use to persuade him?" Dean Xiao casually replied, saying there's a piece of land in East City up for auction, isn't there? Hearing this, Troy Xiao was taken aback and then frowned. He said that piece of land has absolutely no prospects to speak of. "Dean, buying land is a serious matter. Don't be willful, otherwise, if something goes wrong," Dad sighed, "if it lacks prospects, I'll make it promising." Dean Xiao interrupted Troy Xiao, his dark eyes fixed steadily on him as he said, "You can't do it, but that doesn't mean I can't." With that, he turned and walked away without hesitation. Watching his confident retreating figure, I couldn't help but smile at the corners of my mouth. Truly, he's my man. Following Dean Xiao to the door, I glanced back at Troy Xiao. He stood expressionless not far away, his gaze dark and gloomy. Upon arriving at Xinyu, He Yiming, likely disliking the Qiao family, deliberately kept us waiting to assert dominance. I didn't indulge him. After waiting 5 minutes with no sign of him, I took Dean Xiao's hand and prepared to leave. The secretary who received us was taken aback and quickly tried to dissuade us. "No need, just tell your president he'll soon learn how to write the word regret." With that, I gave Dean Xiao a meaningful look, and without hesitation, he immediately stood up and left. However, when the elevator doors opened, He Yiming stepped out with a smile. "I've long heard that the second young master of the Qiao family has a bad temper, but it seems the rumors don't do it justice." Dean Xiao ignored him, only casting an inquiring glance at me. I tilted my head slightly, signaling that it was fine. He then gave He Yiming a lukewarm greeting. Afterwards, we went to the reception room and formally began our conversation with He Yiming. Upon learning that we intended to use the land in Dongcheng as leverage, his eyebrows shot up in surprise. "That piece of land is said to have a very poor reputation. Are you two playing games with me?" Dean Xiao frowned impatiently. Believe it or not, He Yiming's lips twitched. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling quite pleased inside. That piece of land would later be developed by the government, becoming a highly sought-after treasure. This is what I told Dean Xiao based on my memories from my past life, and he believed it almost without hesitation. After a pause, I spoke unhurriedly. "President, he should know my identity. To be frank with President, my goal with Dean Xiao is the entire Qiao family, so we've naturally brought enough sincerity with us." I stared at the man across from me, whose expression had subtly changed, and said in a low voice, "It all depends on whether President he dares to take this gamble." As the words fell, He Yiming fixed his gaze on me for a full 10 seconds, about to speak. "Hey have you seen enough?" Dean Xiao scowled, his eyes flashing with a dangerous glint. Damn it. He Yiming nearly failed to maintain his domineering CEO image and snapped back that he had a wife. Dean Xiao continued glaring at him, seething with jealousy. I struggled to hold back my laughter and quickly wrapped my arms around my little wolf dog to soothe him with a few words. Only then did Dean Xiao calm down, urging He Yiming with a sharp remark, "Either you can do it, or we'll find someone else." He Yiming's face turned livid as he said, Fine, I'll agree to it." All right. With that, the cooperation was settled. After leaving Xinyu, the more I looked at Dean Xiao, the more I liked him, unable to resist. I leaned over and kissed him while he was fastening his seatbelt. He glared at me with a dark expression, saying, "Don't you understand how dangerous it is in the car? Oh, so it's fine if we go back." "Fine what? Can't you just—" His face turned red with frustration, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything condemning. I smiled and said, "Can you not tease him like this?" He suddenly let out a deep sigh, his dark eyes fixed intently on me. "Things like this should be my initiative." With that, he gently pressed a hand against the back of my neck and leaned down to kiss me. My eyes flew open wide. For a moment, I felt countless stars bursting at the corners of my eyes. My heart skipped a beat. Dean Xiao kissed my lips lightly, lingering with a tenderness that seeped into my very bones. My heart was pulled by him, completely sinking. Soon, the land in East City was successfully bid by me and Dean Xiao. The internet was instantly filled with mockery and abuse. That Xiao family's second son really must have something wrong with his head. He actually bought a piece of land nobody wanted without even looking at it. Sigh, the eldest Xiao brother is clearly so outstanding. How come the younger brother is so unimpressive? If the Xiao business falls into his hands, it'll go bankrupt in less than half a month. For a time, even the Xiao family's own people had quite a few complaints about Dean Xiao. Several shareholders even joined forces to oust Dean Xiao, going so far as to summon Xiao Dongliang for this purpose. In the conference room, Xiao Dongliang smiled faintly as he placated the crowd, every wrinkle on his face exuding greed and selfishness. He recounted Dean Xiao's actions in recent days, dismissing them with a casual "pardon my bluntness." Turning his head slightly to glance at Dean Xiao, the corners of his mouth tightened imperceptibly. "You don't need to worry about the company's affairs for now. Do whatever you want. What about my shares?" Dean Xiao looked up and asked. Xiao Dongliang frowned in displeasure, saying, "What do you mean your shares? Those belong to the Xiao family." In an instant, Dean Xiao's face darkened abruptly. He remained silent, but the chilling aura emanating from him created an overwhelming pressure. It rendered the entire conference room completely silent. "I'll only say this once." Staring at Xiao Dongliang, whose expression had slightly changed, he spoke word by word. "That doesn't belong to your Xiao family. It's my mother's. You'd better not touch it." Xiao Dongliang opened his mouth, but then his face turned cold, saying no one coveted his measly shares. "Troy, if he wants to cash out immediately, give it to him. Then make him get the hell out of my company." "No." Dean Xiao stared back at him coldly, saying he didn't want the money. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the meeting room instantly became tense. Everyone thought this meant he wasn't interested in a small stake. He was aiming for something bigger. However, after a moment, Dean Xiao only made one request to Xiao Dongliang. Xiao Dongliang paused, a trace of confusion flashing in his eyes, but he agreed almost without hesitation. Beside them, Troy Xiao's brow furrowed tightly, his lips moving as if he had something to say, but seeing the look on Father Xiao's face, he ultimately held back. I stood to the side, frowning, my gaze fixed on Dean Xiao, watching his expression grow increasingly cold. My heart clenched painfully. His condition didn't seem right. "Dean, shall we go?" I thought Dean Xiao would hesitate, would be unwilling, or might even resist me, but soon, he turned and walked over. He took my hand openly and walked out with me. He didn't speak a word until he got into the car. His grip on me was slightly tight. I glanced down at Dean Xiao's hand, feeling a pang in my heart. Dean Xiao must have been thinking about his mother. It wasn't until after my rebirth that I had someone investigate his background. Dean Xiao's biological mother passed away from a mental illness when he was very young. I've seen photos of his mother. She was a gentle and beautiful dancer. She had waist-length hair and loved wearing beige dresses. In the photo, Dean Xiao was dressed in a miniature suit with a bow tie at the collar, exquisite and handsome. Held by his mother's hand, he was accompanying her as her male dance partner in a dance. It was also the last dance in her life. Later, his mother passed away that winter, while Troy Xiao's mother came to their door with her child. What made it even more unacceptable to him was that Troy Xiao was older than him. This meant his father had cheated years earlier. He was in agony, screaming, and breaking down, but he was just a child, powerless to do anything. He obeyed his mother's words and lived on properly. The weight of suppressed pain in my heart had grown too heavy, making it increasingly difficult to control my emotions. "Dean," I called out softly, and Dean Xiao immediately lifted his head, insisting he was fine. Feeling the increasing pressure in his grip, I sighed and pulled him into a tight embrace. "Speak up if you're unhappy. Curse if you're upset. You don't have to suppress any emotions in front of me." Dean Xiao shuddered violently, finally releasing my hand. "Sorry, I hurt you. It's okay. I know you didn't mean to." Dean Xiao didn't speak, but raised his arms to embrace me. A few seconds later, I heard suppressed sobs coming from where his head rested against my chest. Dean Xiao took deep, shuddering breaths as he gradually tightened his arms around my waist. Feeling his pain, I couldn't help but feel my own eyes grow moist. The greatest fear is not death, but being alive yet utterly alone. I am. and so is he. But when we hold each other, we'll never be lonely again. Don't be afraid, I'm here. I don't know how long it had been when the person in my arms squirmed slightly. Nova Jiang, it's stuffy. I froze for a moment before releasing Dean Xiao. I saw him quickly pull away and return to the driver's seat. The tips of his ears red as blood. The veins on his neck were visibly bulging. I glanced down at the creases pressed into my chest and raised an eyebrow slightly, stifled. Seems to me you're enjoying it quite a bit. Dean Xiao's face instantly flushed red, and he hastily started the car. I burst out laughing, and the gloom in my heart dissipated. After returning, Dean Xiao moved out of the Xiao family home. He bought his own place outside, and over the years, he had been saving money, all earned from car racing bets, stock trading, and investments. I helped him clean up the house together, arrange the furniture together, and turn that house into a home. He listens to everything I say, claiming that a grown man doesn't need to be particular. I responded with an "Oh, how about changing the bathtub to a double one? How about making the glass in the small bathroom of the bedroom transparent? By the way, the bed in the bedroom isn't big enough. We need to buy a bigger one." Dean Xiao's expression was already starting to look unnatural as he stammered and asked me why. I stood on tiptoe, leaned close to his ear, and chuckled softly. "What if there's not enough for us to use?" Dean Xiao tensed up instantly, his Adam's apple bobbing rapidly. I was utterly smitten by his adorable, embarrassed expression. Just as I was about to say I'd stop teasing him, the next second, he scooped me up by the waist and threw me over his shoulder. Dean Xiao threw me onto the bed and pinned me down before I could even bounce back. Then came a torrent of kisses. "Nova Jiang, what kind of engagement banquet do you want?" After the kiss ended, he gripped my hand and asked. I paused, suddenly remembering that we still had an engagement banquet to arrange. Noble families are too particular. This whole process must be followed. After some thought, I said I'd leave it to him, as I had no strong opinions. After all, engagements and weddings have never left a good impression on me. Dean Xiao was silent for a moment, then hugged me without saying a word. Half a month later, the day before my engagement banquet with Dean Xiao, the internet exploded. Because the land plot Dean Xiao and I had purchased was taken over by the government, they are planning to vigorously develop the surrounding area, with substantial expected investments. Naturally, the biggest beneficiaries will be the owner of that land and the relevant personnel. When He Yiming called, I was at his small company with Dean Xiao. That's right. He now has his own company. He carved out his mother's portion of shares and started running this company that had nothing to do with the Qiao family. Qiao Dongliang was, of course, more than happy to oblige. He believed Dean Xiao's presence was a curse to the Qiao Corporation and couldn't wait to kick him out, but neither he nor Troy Qiao could have imagined. This was all part of our plan. Only by completely severing ties with the Qiao family can we remain unscathed when the Qiao enterprise collapses. President Qiao, you must have seen the news about that piece of land online. He Yiming expressed his gratitude and then said he was ready to help whenever needed. Dean Xiao probably still held a grudge from last time, responding indifferently before hanging up the phone directly. However, when he turned to look at me, the domineering CEO instantly transformed into a puppy. His eyes sparkling, he pounced toward me. Tired, I soothingly patted his head. "Just hold on a little longer, it's almost over." Dean Xiao paused for a moment, then suddenly asked me how I planned to deal with Troy Qiao. Public opinion about him online has already started to turn negative, and many partners have begun to defect. Should we take this opportunity to kick him down and ruin his reputation? No. I looked at Dean Xiao's sharply defined face and said this would only ruin his reputation, but it wasn't enough to destroy his name. I want him to taste what despair feels like. Dean Xiao tilted his head to look at me, then after a moment raised his hand and pressed it against my forehead. "I'll do my best to give you whatever you want, so don't frown." I was stunned for a moment, feeling a sudden sting in my nose. That afternoon, I mentioned having some matters to attend to and then parted ways with Dean Xiao. Standing in front of that club, my body couldn't help but tremble. Even if my nails dug deep into my palms, I couldn't suppress it. This place was Troy Qiao's private club, and also my nightmare. He kept a group of high-class escorts here for himself and some so-called big shots to vent their desires. Several times, I saw girls covered in blood being carried out of the rooms. Those who come here are not even human. They're worse than trash, utter beasts. After a long pause, I closed my eyes briefly and stepped inside. I had started making plans ever since I was reborn, and now I've already planted my informants inside. Walking to the floor reserved only for high-level VIPs, I faintly heard sounds coming from the rooms. There were unbearable screams, as well as desperate cries of agony. Under the bizarre and shifting lights, it was like a twisted hell, walking through it. Every inch of my body seemed to ache with excruciating pain, but I still walked in step by step. After identifying the informant, I had him hand over everything he had recorded to me. Watching the girl being humiliated and beaten in the video, I clenched my fingers tightly. A short while later, after handling matters here, I prepared to leave, but just as I reached the stairway, I saw Troy Chiao walking toward me. He had a trembling girl in his arms, his gaze icy and bloodthirsty. My heart sank. And I quickly retreated. For a moment, I didn't know whether to advance or retreat. To advance, and all previous efforts might come to nothing. To retreat, and that girl might be ruined tonight. Miss Jiang, it's time for you to leave. After Troy Chiao left, my subordinate reminded me in a low voice. I stood still for a few seconds, then finally shut my eyes hard. Go back. Find a way to save that girl. Troy Chiao has been having a streak of bad luck lately. If he vents his anger, he might take that girl's life. My subordinate still tried to stop me, saying that even if he's a beast, he probably wouldn't kill someone so casually. He will. I suppressed the trembling in my heart and insisted that he definitely would. I know better than anyone. My subordinate looked at me, opening his mouth as if to speak, then after a moment lowered his head and said, "Understood." Just as I expected, the girl had already suffered a round of brutal beating by the time she was rescued. Troy Chiao made her strip naked and lie on broken glass, then whipped her mercilessly with a wet lash. Every part of her body, except her face, was covered in horrifying wounds, even her private areas, and Troy Chiao, like a deranged madman, grew more and more excited the more he beat her. Just as he was choking the girl, reveling in her suffocating expression, his subordinate burst in and said there was trouble downstairs and someone was threatening to call the police. The moment Troy Chiao turned his head, he looked like a demon, but he quickly regained his composure. Not only did he change into clean clothes, but he also calmly instructed his subordinate to deal with the girl. I hid in the shadows, watching his face, my chest nearly bursting. Once my subordinate informed me the girl had been rescued, I immediately left the club. In the car, my subordinate glanced at me again through the rearview mirror. "Miss Jiang, are you alright?" I suddenly looked up, tugged at my soaked collar, and said it was nothing. Then, "Shall we return to the Jiang residence? You have an engagement banquet tomorrow morning." "No, let's go to the Shizhi Bay Villa." I look out the window, and the only face that comes to mind is Dean Chiao's. At this moment, all I want is to see him. Yet, what I never expected in any way was, Troy Chiao actually prepared such a huge surprise for me, seeing Dean Chiao's villa completely dark. I vaguely sensed something was wrong and hurried upstairs. The moment I smelled blood, my heart sank heavily. I pushed the door open abruptly. The next second, I froze dead in my tracks. There lay a completely naked woman at the bathroom door, surrounded by water, with dried bloodstains on her forehead. Meanwhile, Dean Chiao sat on the floor beside the bathtub, gripping a dagger tightly in his hand. But the dagger wasn't aimed at anyone else, it was pointed at himself, at his own blooded arm. His gaze was so hollow it sent chills down the spine, his face devoid of any color. He moved like a walking corpse. Upon seeing me, he paused for barely half a second before grabbing the dagger and stabbing down again. "Stop!" I suddenly lunged forward and tightly grabbed Dean Chiao's hand. His strength was astonishing. Yet we remained locked in a standstill. I quickly turned my head and signaled my subordinate to fetch the sedative from the car. The subordinate immediately turned and rushed downstairs. "Dean, it's me, I'm back." I freed one hand to lift Dean Chiao's face, forcing him to see me clearly. Soaked and trembling uncontrollably, he still managed to turn his gaze toward me. "Nova Jiang, it's me." Dean Chiao's face momentarily twisted in pain. He clutched at my clothes, struggling, yet also trying to push me away. He kept murmuring my name, telling me to leave, saying he would hurt me. I remained silent, just gripping his hand tightly. Soon, my subordinate came in and helped administer a sedative to Dean Chiao. Even as he passed out, he was still clutching my hand tightly. I had my subordinates help carry him to the bed, never letting go of him the entire time. After a moment, I spoke hoarsely, "Check if that woman is still breathing." The subordinate turned to comply. In those brief seconds, countless outcomes and escape routes flashed through my mind. The girl on the ground isn't an ordinary person. She's the wealthy young lady who was clinging to Dean Xiao at the bar earlier, Zhu Qianqian. If she dies, Miss Jiang, I paused and tilted my head slightly. The person isn't dead, only injured on the forehead. The subordinate hesitated before saying, "Judging by the physical signs, there are also traces resembling being drugged." I blinked, my mind going blank for a moment. Looking down at Dean Xiao's soaked bathrobe, I gave a slight nod. "Understood. Find a doctor to handle it and have her blood tested." "Yes." The subordinate led Zhu Qianqian away, and the room fell completely silent. I stood guard beside Dean Xiao, the chill in my heart slowly spreading. If I'm not mistaken, there must be reporters lying in wait near Dean Xiao's villa. They are watching this place like hawks, waiting to dig up the scandal between Dean Xiao and Zhu Qianqian, making tomorrow's engagement banquet the backdrop for Dean Xiao and me to become infamous. Clenching my fingers tightly, I slowly lowered my gaze. "Troy Xiao, since you're in such a hurry, then tomorrow will be your last day." More than an hour later, Dean Xiao woke up. He abruptly sat up, his back arched like a wild leopard ready to strike. His fist nearly swung at me the very next second, however. Upon realizing who I was, he froze for a moment before abruptly pulling me into his arms. "Nova Jiang," amid heavy breaths, he murmured in a deep voice that it wasn't an illusion after all. "Nova." "I'm sorry." Hearing these words, I closed my eyes for a moment, my throat ached with dryness, but the words "it's okay" just wouldn't come out. Before I could react, I heard Dean Xiao say, "You once said you don't like people casually entering our home." "I'm sorry." My remaining shred of sober consciousness steadied itself, faintly sensing something, and then, Dean Xiao muttered that there was nothing more. "I didn't touch her, nor did I glance at her. I used an object to hit her, not my hands." I was stunned for a moment, feeling both amused and exasperated. Yet, there was also a faint sense of joy, as if I had regained something lost. I knew very well that even if Dean Xiao had really done something with her, I couldn't blame him. But at this moment of knowing the truth, I still feel fortunate. "Dean, thank you. Thank you for holding me in the highest regard, for staying sober even at the cost of hurting yourself. Thank you for everything you've done for me." After Dean Xiao fully regained consciousness, Zhu Qianqian downstairs also woke up. She was crying pitifully, claiming she had been framed and drugged, yet she never dared to look up at Dean Xiao. I watched her and couldn't help but curl my lips, wanting to laugh. Dean Xiao has already told me the whole story. He came back from outside and saw Zhu Qianqian, who had been drugged. Zhu Qianqian was crying and begging him to help her. He initially didn't want to get involved. But then he noticed the reporters hiding in the shadows. If Zhu Qianqian were allowed to leave just like that, the young girl's reputation would most likely be completely ruined. She might even be targeted by those with ill intentions. With no other choice, he had to bring her into the villa but forbade her from going upstairs. Who would have thought this woman would be so reckless, stripping naked and going upstairs to try to seduce Dean Xiao? When Dean Xiao took her out of the car, he accidentally inhaled some powder, which left his already fragile mental state even more vulnerable. So the moment he saw Zhu Qianqian, he didn't hesitate at all, grabbing something and knocking her out cold. But under the stimulation of blood and drugs, his own emotions were also triggered. I could only resort to hurting myself to stay awake in the end. The thought of the glaring wounds on Dean Xiao's arm made my heart ache. With a cold glance at Zhu Qianqian, I threw Troy Xiao under the bus. I told her that, barring any surprises, it was likely Troy Xiao trying to set her up. But you better remember this. If you hadn't been acting like a bitch today, maybe none of this would have happened. Zhu Qianqian bit her lip hard, looking pitiful and vulnerable. I wasn't buying any of it. Staring straight at her, I enunciated each word clearly. "I'm telling you, if it weren't for me and Dean Xiao today, you'd have been torn apart by other men by now. I'll hold you accountable for Dean Xiao's injuries. If you know what's good for you, I suggest you do exactly as I say from now on." Zhu Qianqian's face turned pale with fear. Seeing that Dean Xiao couldn't even be bothered to look at her, she seemed to finally face the truth. She slowly lowered her head and finally said she would leave it all to me. Early the next morning, the engagement banquet proceeded as usual. The reporters staking out near Dean Xiao's villa captured nothing. Only photos of Dean Chow and me happily coming and going. Upon entering the banquet hall, I spotted Troy Chow in the corner at a glance. His face darkened as he listened to what the person beside him was saying. By the time the person finished speaking, only a sinister gloom remained on his face. Turning his head, he quickly gave a few orders to his subordinates. Watching him act as if facing a formidable enemy, the pent-up frustration in my heart slowly dissipated. It started, not long after. The banquet began. Troy Chow's expression grew increasingly grim. He kept answering calls, constantly losing his temper and issuing orders to his subordinates. But it's just a drop in the bucket. I glanced at my phone and saw the news had already broken. Chow Corporation is suspected of tax evasion and is under investigation. Nova Jiang, this is your doing. Suddenly, Troy Chow's voice came from across the room. I slightly raised my head and met a face darkened to the extreme. Are you fucking insane? What good does the Chow family's downfall do for your Jiang family? If you want to be with Dean Chow, then just be with him. No one's stopping you. What the hell do you mean by targeting our family? When the fuck have I, Troy Chow, ever wronged you? As I watched the man raging before me, I silently thought to myself, in my past life, indeed, in this life, he hasn't started hurting me yet, but the disgusting things he did were enough to kill him 100 times over. Seeing that I remained silent, the madness in Troy Chow's eyes nearly overflowed. He took a step forward and suddenly grabbed my arm, demanding that we move somewhere else to talk. Let go. The moment he touched me, my whole body convulsed. Yet he held onto me tightly, as if trying to crush me. Seeing the look in his eyes, fear rapidly spread through my heart, and in an instant, all my strength left me. Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch her. The next second, Dean Chow suddenly appeared, delivering a powerful punch that sent Troy Chow sprawling to the ground. His eyes were bloodshot, radiating an unusual aura of bloodlust. Before Troy Chow could get up, he rained down several more punches. I snapped back to reality, thinking he had another episode, and quickly stepped forward to stop him. Dean, don't dirty your hands. Dean Chow threw another heavy punch, directly knocking Troy Chow's face sideways. Mindful of my presence, he finally stopped. The fury in his eyes showed no sign of abating as he glared fixedly at Troy Chow. I found his reaction somewhat odd, but there was no time to dwell on it. I quickly pulled him away to a more distant spot. Soon, guests from the entire banquet hall gathered around. Seeing Dean Chow strike someone, they began to murmur and exchange whispers. Openly and covertly, they called Dean Chow a madman. Some people left immediately out of fear. Amid the chaos, I gradually regained my composure. I asked Dean Chow what was wrong, but he just shook his head without speaking. His expression still grim. I had no choice but to set it aside for the moment and told him all the evidence was ready. He stared coldly at Troy Chow not far away and said, "Then let's begin." Just as chaos erupted in the hall, a video suddenly started playing on the large screen. The first half of the video consists of photos, with each one zooming in to reveal content entirely about the Chow family. It documents the dirty money the Chow family has earned over the years through cunning schemes and personal connections. It also records the illegal activities carried out by Troy Chow after taking over the company, in collusion with internal personnel. Finally, the video exposes the powerful sex transactions secretly conducted by dozens of the company's top executives and even shareholders. One after another, hideous faces appeared on the screen, causing the Chow family executives who had come for the family's reputation to turn pale. My God, what is all this? Madness, sheer madness. Has the Chow family gone completely insane? That Troy Chow was said to be young and promising, so this is what promising looks like. The Chow family is done for this time. Who knows who's behind this? Watch your words, or the police might take you in for questioning too. Amid the uproar, Troy Chow became the target of public criticism. Countless people were pointing fingers and making disparaging remarks about him, tearing him down as worthless. Some even say that the Chow family's current predicament is all his fault. Troy Chow, bruised and battered, weaved through the crowd, his face a mix of blue and red. But just then, a sudden exclamation erupted from the crowd. What's that? Troy Chow's private club. Everyone turned to look at the source of the sound and saw the video playing on the screen. It was all footage from Troy Chow's club. The girls in the video were pixelated, but their suffering was unmistakable. As the audience watched these beasts in human skin humiliate, torment, and abuse them, The room fell into a deathly silence. Troy Chow stared at those videos, completely dumbfounded on the spot. I watched as the expression on his face was gradually replaced by despair, and the pent-up frustration in my heart finally dissipated for the most part. "You're welcome. These are all well-deserved. Bastards. These animals are nothing but scum. The world is going to the dogs. Such filthy, despicable things are happening right under our noses. This Troy Chow is a damn beast. He deserves to die." Furious curses filled the air as outrage was written across everyone's faces. No matter how dirty they may be in private, at this moment they must present themselves as righteous warriors fighting against evil. Slap! Someone slapped Troy Chow across the face, cursing him for being shameless. They said the video showed children about the same age as their own daughters. How dare Troy Chow do such things? That slap seemed to flip a switch. Many people surged forward, shoving and cursing at Troy Chow. Troy Chow was in a sorry state, his face filled with terror. He desperately dodged and pushed, trying to break free from the crowd, but failed several times. Under immense torment, he let out a heart-wrenching roar. At the same moment, police sirens sounded outside. Troy Chow fled. When the police arrived, he slipped away from the crowd in the chaos. But I had already cut off all his other escape routes, leaving him only a dead end. I told the police he might try to escape abroad by water. The police were skeptical but quickly sent someone to investigate. Meanwhile, Dean Chow and I stayed in the banquet hall until all the guests had left. We stood on the stage, exchanged engagement rings, and shared a gentle kiss. Sensing that Dean Chow still seemed off, I couldn't help but frown and ask him what was really wrong. Seeing my displeasure, he tightened his grip on my hand. Only after my repeated questioning did he finally say that he had found out about my visit to Troy Chow's underground club last night. I paused for half a second before asking him. And then, his eyes suddenly burned with anger again as he said in a low voice that he had also met the girl I rescued. "That girl's name is Chen Yi." "Chen Yi, Dean Chow said hoarsely. "Troy Chow specifically had someone find her. A girl who resembles you." I suddenly froze. Suddenly recalling that girl's features, they did seem somewhat similar to mine. My heart sank slightly, and I vaguely felt nauseous. That trash Troy Chow couldn't possibly have any feelings for me. Probably resenting me but unable to vent it on me. So they found someone similar to me. Damn it! Dean Chow suddenly kicked over the chair beside him, saying he wished he could kill that bastard Troy Chow. Looking at his furious face, I strangely felt a sense of calm settle in my heart. It's okay, thankfully. Nothing has gone off track, thankfully. Dean Chow is here. Gently holding Dean Chow's face, I kissed him without another word. Dean Chow's breathing grew heavier, and after a few seconds, he suddenly picked me up and placed me on the table. Conquering cities and seizing territories. The Chow family officially declared bankruptcy, with Chow Dongliang imprisoned and Chow's mother receiving a suspended sentence. The Jiang family was implicated, resulting in the confiscation of most of their assets, and my father was also removed from his position. But under my prior precautions, they suffered no reputational damage. This was already the greatest safeguard. I arranged new accommodations for them, then moved in with Dean Chow, the home we had decorated together before. After settling me in, Dean Chow was about to leave again when I stopped him. "Troy Chow will be caught sooner or later. Don't bother." Dean Chow showed hesitation, and I pretended to be displeased. "What, am I not attractive enough to you now? Once you get it, you don't cherish it anymore, right?" In one sentence, Dean Chow turned around without a word and walked back. He rested his head on the crook of my neck like a big dog, nuzzling over and over, then muttered that as long as Troy Chow remained at large, he wouldn't feel at ease. I said, "Got it, but we can't waste our time on that piece of trash either. We're already engaged. How could you bear to leave your new bride alone in an empty bed night after night?" Before the words had even finished, Dean Chow's expression had already changed. "Nova Jiang, it's only 9 o'clock now. Are you sure about this?" I laughed. "The little brat is getting a bit cocky. It's only 9 o'clock. So go to bed early. I didn't ask you to fight until dawn." Dean Chow looked at me without saying a word, but the tips of his ears gradually turned red. I was secretly delighted and deliberately provoked him by saying, "You're not incapable, are you?" Afterwards, I was carried back to the room by Dean Chow and thoroughly lectured. When I passed out, I glanced at the time. It seemed barely past midnight. "Dean, I'm here," hearing Dean Chow's deep voice. I fell into a deep sleep, but I don't know how much time had passed when I was suddenly choked by a force, almost unable to breathe, dazedly waking up. I realized Dean Xiao had sat up at some point, holding me tightly with one arm. Feeling his unease, I frowned and hugged him back, asking what was wrong. This time, I was startled. Somehow, he was covered in cold sweat. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare, or are you feeling unwell? Speak to me, don't scare me, Dean. I'm fine, I'm okay. But Dean Xiao held me tightly, saying he just missed me. Nova Jiang, I love you. I froze, but before I could react, he fiercely kissed me. The next second, he tore off the pajamas he had just helped me change into before bed. When I opened my eyes again, my body felt as if it had been run over by a car several times. It took me forever just to lift my arm. Gritting my teeth, I turned my head and cursed under my breath, damn, you're fixing everything in one go, so you're never coming back for the rest of your life. Dean Xiao, get your ass in here. I hissed the words, but there was no response from outside. I frowned. If that bastard dared to leave me alone in bed this early, I'd make sure to neuter him someday. Turn him into my sister. No sooner had my feet touched the ground than a figure came running over. Dean Xiao rushed in with breakfast in hand and sternly stopped me when he saw me getting out of bed barefoot. Don't move. He set down the breakfast, walked over, gave my ankle a punishing pinch, and then helped me put on my shoes. I feel a bit flattered, yet also think I should take it for granted. I'm a man, after all. With a slight curl of my lips, I asked him what he had done. He said he wasn't very good at it, so he just made some porridge casually. Then he brought the porridge over and even pretended to feed me. I pushed him away speechlessly, saying it wasn't like I was postpartum and needed to be waited on. Dean Xiao just looked at me and smiled, his gaze impossibly tender. As I looked at him, I suddenly froze, in my mind. The look in his eyes when he jumped into the sea holding my ashes in the previous life surfaced, almost exactly the same as now. A wave of warmth filled my heart as I leaned down and gently hugged him. Troy Xiao died. He died at 5 o'clock in the morning that day. It is said that he died on the way back after being captured. Some say he died suddenly from illness, some say from poisoning, and others say he was shot dead. I have no way of knowing the exact details. I don't want to know anymore. Because I know very well. Dean Xiao went out once this morning, stretching. I walked to the balcony to feel the sunlight. It seems that only at this moment have I truly emerged from the darkness. The days ahead are bright, long, and radiant. Nova Jiang, let's get married. Dean Xiao embraced me from behind. I smiled and said, sure, then I'll have someone prepare everything now. We'll hold the wedding and get the marriage certificate tomorrow. I was completely dumbfounded. Who's ever heard of someone getting engaged one day and married the next? But I've waited so long, so very long. Dean Xiao stared at me intently, his eyes filled with nothing but sincerity and passion. I looked at the man before me, feeling my heart soften bit by bit. After a long pause, I nodded with a smile. Then let's get married. Extra one. Dean Xiao, the night I truly got together with Nova Jiang, I had a nightmare. It unraveled all the long-standing doubts I had. In the dream, Nova Jiang didn't choose me but instead chose Troy Xiao. Just like everyone else, she was convinced that Troy Xiao was outstanding and wonderful. I don't think so. I know he's very scheming, hiding a dagger behind his smile. But if he can treat Nova Jiang well, if Nova Jiang is willing, I can step aside. What I never expected, no matter what, was that Troy Xiao is a beast. The day before the wedding, he was fooling around outside and got caught by Nova Jiang. Not only did he refuse to admit his mistake, but he also slapped Nova Jiang, saying she had no way out now. I was furious and wanted to rush over to beat him to death, only to realize it was just a dream, and the me in the dream had already left the scene, too disheartened to stay. Everything that followed flashed by like a revolving lantern, yet it left an indelible mark on my heart. I saw Troy Xiao constantly surrounded by admirers outside. Yet he treated Nova Jiang with cold indifference upon returning home. Nova Jiang was deeply disappointed and wanted to try to break free from the Qiao family to work outside. Troy Xiao flew into a rage upon discovering it and physically struck her. My Nova Jiang just lay there on the ground, the bleeding from the hole in her forehead continuing until it stopped on its own. My heart ached with trembling pain, yet I could only watch from afar. Everything that followed felt more like a terrifying nightmare. Troy Xiao became increasingly violent, venting all his frustrations from outside on Nova Jiang when he returned home. Not only that, he actually started taking Nova Jiang out to social events. At first, it was just drinking, but later it escalated to inappropriate touching. Eventually, it turned into sexual relations. At that moment, I felt as if I had died once. I desperately began searching for the version of myself in the dream, and finally found it, only to discover that the dream version of me had been framed by Troy Chiao, breaking a leg during a race, and had since spiraled into ruin. I didn't dare to go back and face Nova Jiang. I understand, but I can't accept it. When I was very young, I actually met Nova Jiang once. At that time, my mother was still alive. I sneaked out of the villa to play, but was bullied by the kids nearby. They called me the little lunatic son of a lunatic, hit me with a stick and made me kneel down to kowtow. That's when Nova Jiang appeared, wearing a beautiful and clean princess dress. She pointed at those people and said if they bullied me again, she would tell her dad. Those kids all knew who her dad was and quickly ran away. Nova Jiang didn't pay any attention to me either, swaying her braids as she skipped away. She forgot about me, but I remembered her. It wasn't until I went to college that I had the fortune of seeing her again. Dean Xiao, the girl I once held so dearly in my heart, is now being trampled and humiliated. Yet, I can't even hold her in my arms. All I can do is watch as she is tortured beyond endurance, step by step towards collapse. When I saw her take out the knife to end her life, my heart nearly shattered. I desperately pleaded, crying and shouting, begging him to wait, just wait a little longer, until I could find a way to save her. In the end, she didn't die, but she had already become like a walking corpse. I was in agony, dazedly feeling as though it might not have been a dream, but it was real. If it was truly a dream, she begged to wake up soon. Later, as I had wished, Nova Jiang's nightmare came to an end. Stop dwelling on that car crash designed by Troy Chiao. Her body was shattered in the collision, her already gaunt face now ghostly pale, yet I still found her as beautiful as ever. I reached out, longing to touch her, never expecting my hand would actually make contact. At that moment, I merged with the version of myself that appeared in the dream. Together, we kissed Nova Jiang's corpse, grieved together, and went mad together. Together, we turned the Chiao family upside down, and together, we killed Troy Chiao. The moment we jumped into the sea, I finally held my Nova Jiang tightly. Next life, could you meet me a little earlier?